Most people have never had to think about this, and for a long time, that was a luxury the modern world quietly handed us. But conflict doesn't send a calendar invite. It doesn't wait until you've stocked up on supplies or figured out an exit route. It shows up, fast, loud, and completely indifferent to whether you're ready. So here's what you actually do. If war reaches your city tonight, do these 15 things in the first 30 minutes. Thing 15, don't freeze. Move with purpose. The first 60 seconds are the most dangerous, not because of the bombs or the gunfire, but because of you. The human brain, when hit with sudden, overwhelming threat, has a well-documented tendency to just stop. Psychologists call it behavioral inaction under stress. Everyone else calls it freezing. Studies of civilian behavior during sudden conflict, from Sarajevo in the 1990s to more recent urban warfare in Mosul and Mariupol, consistently show that people who survive the opening chaos are not necessarily the strongest or the best prepared. They're the ones who started moving first, even imperfectly. What happens physiologically is mechanical. The amygdala sends a distress signal to your nervous system before your conscious mind has fully registered what's happening. Your body floods with stress hormones. Time perception distorts. Complex thinking temporarily degrades. Under acute threat, the nervous system prepares the body for fast physical action, not careful strategic thinking. And for most civilians with no prior training, the result is paralysis rather than movement because there's no pre-existing script to execute. The counter to this is not heroism. It's a simple pre-decided action. If you have already decided, right now, in this moment of calm, what your first 3 physical steps are when something catastrophic happens, your brain has a script to run. It no longer needs to improvise under pressure. Psychologists call this if-then planning. The instinct to stand still and wait to understand what's happening is natural. Act against it. Your first job is simple. Get low, get inside, and get away from windows. That's it. Everything else comes after. Thing 14, get away from glass and exterior walls. This one sounds almost insultingly obvious until you realize how many people in conflict zones have been seriously injured, not by direct fire, but by shattered glass and debris. Window glass under blast pressure doesn't just break. It fragments at high velocity and travels in every direction. The physics of a pressure wave are worth understanding briefly. When an explosive detonates, it sends a supersonic shockwave outward in all directions. That wave can shatter every window simultaneously, not just on the side facing the blast, but on all sides as the wave wraps around the structure, turning glass into a cloud of high-velocity projectiles moving inward. This is not a fringe event. Emergency medicine literature from conflicts in Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, and Ukraine consistently identifies glass injuries as among the most common causes of hospitalization for civilians in urban warfare zones. Blast-related eye injuries, lacerations, and embedded glass fragments account for a substantial share of the non-fatal casualties treated at field hospitals. The safest interior spaces in a building during an initial attack are interior rooms, bathrooms, hallways, and stairwells. These spaces put the most structural material between you and whatever is happening outside. Exterior walls, especially those with windows, become hazards the moment an explosion or pressure wave hits nearby. Drop to the floor if you're near glass. Move to an interior room. A bathtub, as unglamorous as it sounds, offers meaningful protection from shrapnel because of the solid material surrounding it on multiple sides. If you have children, put them in the bathtub first. It's not comfortable. It might be the safest place in the building. Thing 13, silence your phone, but don't turn it off. This seems counterintuitive. You want communication. You want to know what's happening. But in the first 30 minutes of active conflict, your phone is also a signal emitter, a light source, and a sound source, all of which can draw attention in the wrong circumstances. Put it on silent. Disable the flash. Turn down screen brightness to its minimum. Keep it charged and close. Emergency alerts, official communications from civil defense authorities, and real-time maps of conflict activity depend on your phone being functional. In Ukraine, the National Emergency Alert app became a critical survival tool for civilians during active missile campaigns. Alerts often gave people several minutes of warning before a strike, enough time to reach shelter. Several European countries have similar systems, as do South Korea, Japan, and Israel. Equally important, Preserve your battery. In the first hour of serious conflict, charging infrastructure may become unavailable. A phone that dies because you spent 20 minutes watching live streams of the situation is a phone that can't receive the alert telling you to evacuate. Do not, however, spend those first 30 minutes scrolling social media. The information environment at the very start of urban conflict is almost always wrong, chaotic, and amplified by panic. Rumors outpace facts by hours. Footage gets misattributed. Casualty numbers are guessed at wildly. You will see things that increase your fear without giving you any useful information. None of that helps you in the next 30 minutes. What helps you is moving, sheltering, and staying in contact with the people who matter to you. Your phone is a tool for those things. Use it accordingly. Thing 12. Grab your go bag if you have one. If you have a pre-packed emergency bag, now is when it pays off. If you don't, and most people don't, you have roughly 2 to 3 minutes to grab what matters most before you need to move. Priorities, in rough order: water, cash and small bills, any prescription medication, your identification documents, a phone charger and power bank, a flashlight, and a change of clothing. That's your functional minimum. The Red Cross and FEMA both recommend having a pre-assembled emergency kit, 72 hours of supplies per person as a baseline. In active conflict scenarios, the International Committee of the Red Cross, ICRC, adds a few items specific to urban warfare: a whistle for signaling under rubble, a dust mask, and a basic first aid kit. Cash in small denominations deserves emphasis. During major conflicts, digital payment infrastructure fails early. ATMs run out, banks close, and card networks go down. In the 2022 Russian invasion of Ukraine, cash was the only functional currency in several cities during acute phases. Small bills matter because vendors in a crisis often can't make change. Identification documents, passport, national ID, medical records for prescriptions are equally critical. Checkpoints, shelter registration, and border crossings all require them. Losing them mid-conflict creates cascading problems at the worst possible time. Most people reading this have not packed a go bag. That's fine. Tonight is not the time to be self-critical about it. Grab what you can in 2 to 3 minutes and move. If you're watching this from a quiet evening at home, consider spending the next weekend putting one together. It takes about an hour, and it will sit in a closet hopefully unused for the rest of your life. That's the best possible outcome. Thing 11. Identify your nearest shelter. Designated civilian shelters exist in more cities than most people realize, and most people have no idea where they are. In countries with active civil defense programs, Finland, Switzerland, South Korea, Israel, underground shelters are systematically mapped and accessible within a short walk of most residential areas. Finland has invested decades in building one of the most comprehensive civil shelter networks in the world. Over 50,000 designated public shelters, many of them reinforced underground facilities with independent air filtration, power generation, and water supply. Shelter preparedness there is treated as a basic civic responsibility, similar to knowing the location of the nearest hospital. Switzerland similarly maintains a legal requirement for sufficient shelter capacity for its entire population, with bunker spaces integrated into apartment buildings, schools, and public infrastructure. If you live in a city without a formal shelter network, which describes the majority of cities in much of the world, your options become structural: basements, underground parking, subway stations. Anything below ground level offers significantly more protection from blast effects and shrapnel than above-ground structures. General Serhiy Popko, head of the Kyiv City Military Administration, stated during the 2022 to 2024 conflict period that Kyiv's subway system sheltered hundreds of thousands of civilians during missile attacks, and that the station's reinforced concrete infrastructure made them among the safest places in the city during active bombardment. Know your nearest option before you need it. If you're reading this in a moment of calm, look it up now. A 5-minute search today is worth considerably more than a frantic one at 2 in the morning. Thing 10. Do not use elevators. Brief, but essential. Power infrastructure is among the first things disrupted during urban conflict, either through direct targeting or cascading failures in the grid. Elevators trap people. In a scenario where power cuts out during an attack, being stuck between floors in an elevator shaft is not a survivable inconvenience. It's a serious emergency on top of an existing emergency. There's also the matter of rescue capacity. Emergency responders in active conflict zones are overwhelmed by immediate life-threatening situations. A person trapped in an elevator during a bombardment is low on the priority list. You may wait hours or longer. Beyond power failure, elevator shafts in buildings that take structural damage can become crush hazards. The shaft walls, the counterweights, and the cab itself represent significant falling mass risk when a building is structurally compromised. Take the stairs, always. And if you're above the ground floor when things start, go down, not up. Rooftops and upper floors are more exposed, harder to rescue from, and structurally more vulnerable to blast damage than lower levels. Thing 9. Establish a family meeting point, right now. If you're separated from family members or household members at the moment conflict begins, if someone is at work, at school, at a neighbor's, you need a pre-established meeting point, and if you haven't established one, you need to do it in the next few minutes. Pick 2 points. One, close to home, a neighbor's building, a corner store, something a child or elderly person can reach on their own. One further away, in case the immediate neighborhood is inaccessible. A landmark, a community building, a relative's address in a different part of the city. Share the information verbally and, if possible, written on paper, not a text message, not a cloud note, paper in a pocket. Cell networks in active conflict zones become congested and unreliable within minutes. During the September 11th attacks, the cellular network in Manhattan effectively collapsed as call volumes spiked beyond capacity. The same pattern has been documented in multiple European cities under attack. Children old enough to understand should know the plan by memory. This means practicing it, however briefly and however awkward that conversation is to have. A child who knows where to go without being told is not in danger of being a child waiting alone in a building for guidance that may not come. What you don't want is a situation where everyone is simultaneously trying to find everyone else while moving through an active threat environment. That dynamic, multiple people moving independently through danger, each looking for the others, dramatically increases risk for everyone involved. The meeting point removes that dynamic. You go there, you wait, you find each other. Thing 8. Turn off the gas. Fires kill more people in conflict zones than is commonly understood. Artillery, missiles, and airstrikes can rupture gas lines, both inside buildings and underground, creating fire and explosion risks that compound the initial damage. In the 1991 Gulf War, in Lebanon's civil war, and in virtually every documented urban conflict, secondary fires were responsible for a significant share of civilian casualties. The mechanism is straightforward. A strike damages a gas line. Gas accumulates in an enclosed space. A spark, from falling debris, electrical failure, or simply a light switch, ignites it. The resulting explosion is often more destructive to the immediate building than the original strike. In Beirut's neighborhoods during repeated conflict periods, residents developed an informal practice of immediately shutting off gas when they heard sustained bombardment, having learned through direct and painful community experience what gas-fueled secondary fires could do to residential blocks. Turn off your gas supply at the main valve. If you don't know where it is in your home, find out right now, before this is ever relevant. It takes about 15 seconds and it can prevent your building from becoming a secondary fire hazard. While you're at it, know where your main electrical breaker is. In scenarios where wiring is damaged and sparks are possible, cutting electrical supply to a damaged section of the building reduces fire risk meaningfully. Thing 7. Fill containers with water. Water infrastructure is one of the most vulnerable systems in any city under attack. Pumping stations require electricity. Pipes run under roads and intersections, exactly the places that take damage during bombardment. And once water pressure drops, it may not come back for days or weeks. Fill every container you have. Bathtubs, pots, buckets, water bottles, whatever is available. Do this immediately, while infrastructure is still functional. Clean drinking water, absent reliable infrastructure, becomes among the most urgent survival needs within 24 hours. This is not a hypothetical concern. In the siege of Sarajevo, which lasted from April 1992 to February 1996 and remains the longest siege of a capital city in the history of modern warfare at 1,425 days, water access was one of the defining survival challenges for civilians. Residents collected water from rivers, melted snow, and walked significant distances under sniper fire to reach functioning pumps. The city endured periods of up to 6 months without functioning water supply during certain stages of the siege. The World Health Organization's guidelines for emergency water storage suggest a minimum of 1 liter per person per hour for basic survival, with 3 to 5 liters per day as a practical minimum for drinking and sanitation combined. Fill the bathtub first. It holds the most volume. Then fill every pot, bottle, and container you have. If you have large Ziploc bags, fill those too. The goal is to put as much water into storage as possible in the time before infrastructure fails. You can always empty containers you don't need. You cannot manufacture water that isn't there. Thing 6. Stay low and move low. If you need to move through a building or between buildings during active conflict, the principle is simple. Reduce your profile. Crouch or crawl when moving near windows or along exterior walls. In open spaces between buildings, and this is a situation you want to avoid entirely if possible, move fast, move low, and move between cover. Military doctrine on civilian movement under fire is surprisingly consistent across different armies and eras. The human silhouette at standing height is a significant target. Reduce it. In Sarajevo, during the 1992 to 1996 siege, residents who regularly needed to cross exposed streets developed routines for minimizing exposure time and profile. The principle was fast across the open, slow, and low through shelter. Some residents spray-painted warning signs at exposed intersections, Pazi, Sniper, Caution, Sniper, to alert neighbors to the most dangerous crossing points in the city. That level of organized community awareness about movement routes developed because moving incorrectly, even briefly, had lethal consequences. The same logic applies indoors. If you don't know the situation outside, where fire is coming from, whether there are threats at street level, stay back from windows, stay low, and move along interior walls. Your instinct to look out and assess the situation is strong. Your window is not cover. Keep that in mind. Thing 5. Do not broadcast your location on social media. This one is for the current era, and it matters more than most people expect. Posting your real-time location, photographs of your surroundings, or information about where you're sheltering on social media during active conflict creates intelligence that can be, and in documented cases, has been, used to target civilians or track the movement of populations. During the conflicts in both Ukraine and Gaza, researchers and military analysts documented instances where social media posts were used to triangulate positions, identify active shelter locations, and track the movement of both military and civilian groups. Geo-tagged photographs posted to Instagram, live streams on Facebook, and location-tagged check-ins on various platforms have all been flagged in open-source intelligence analyses as contributing to targeting decisions. This is not a hypothetical, and it's not a conspiracy theory. It's a documented feature of modern warfare. The impulse to document and share is deeply human and especially strong during extraordinary events. Resist it during the acute phase. Your followers can wait. The record can wait. If you need to communicate your safety to family, do it privately. Direct message, a private call, or a pre-established code word that tells them you're okay without revealing your location. Keep public posts minimal or non-existent until the situation has stabilized and official communications have given the all clear. Thing 4. Check on a neighbor, especially elderly or disabled ones. Community resilience in disaster scenarios is not a soft concept. It is one of the most consistently documented factors in survival outcomes. In virtually every major urban conflict or disaster studied, from the 1995 Kobe earthquake to the London Blitz to contemporary urban warfare, survival rates are meaningfully higher in communities where people know and help each other. Rebecca Solnit, who wrote extensively about community response to disasters in her book, A Paradise Built in Hell, documented that the most striking feature of major disaster response is not panic, it's solidarity. People who don't know each other help each other at extraordinary rates. Communities that were already connected before the disaster perform even better. In the first 30 minutes, if you can do it safely, check on immediate neighbors, particularly those who are elderly, live alone, or have mobility limitations. These are the people who may not be able to self-evacuate, may not have received alerts on their phones, may not have family checking in on them, and may not be physically capable of reaching shelter without assistance. Knock on the door. One knock, 30 seconds, move on if there's no answer. That's it. You're not launching a rescue operation. You're providing a 30-second window of awareness to someone who may desperately need it. This costs you very little time if done quickly and stays close to your building. And the difference it can make for the person on the other side of that door, who may be sitting frozen and frightened with no one checking on them, is not small. Thing 3. Know the difference between cover and concealment. This distinction is used in military and emergency training, but is rarely communicated to civilians. And it's genuinely important. It's also one of those things where cinema has done serious damage to public understanding. Concealment hides you. A bush, a curtain, a parked car, a wooden door. These things may make you visually less obvious, but they provide no meaningful physical protection from bullets, shrapnel, or blast pressure. They are, in the most literal sense, decoration between you and danger. Cover actually protects you. Reinforced concrete walls, earth embankments, stone and brick structures, the engine block of a vehicle, these can stop or significantly slow projectiles and reduce blast effects. In an urban environment, the difference is critical. A car, despite what decades of action films have trained you to believe, is not cover, it's concealment. Bullets pass through car doors with very little resistance. The engine block, positioned at the front of the vehicle, is the one genuine exception. The massive metal there provides some meaningful protection. A concrete wall or a solid masonry structure is cover. The inside of a building is not automatically cover either. Drywall partitions, the kind used in most modern interior walls, provide essentially no ballistic protection. Hollow core interior doors offer nothing. The walls that matter are the load-bearing ones. Reinforced concrete, thick brick or stone masonry, structural columns. In a modern building, those are usually the exterior walls and the central core. Get to one of those if you can. The floor you're on matters too. A basement or the lowest floor above ground is generally preferable. It puts the most structural material between you and airborne threats. Upper floors are more exposed to fragments, pressure waves, and have further to fall in a structural failure. Thing 2. Listen and follow official civil defense instructions. Every country with a functioning civil defense system has an official communication channel for civilian guidance during conflict. In Israel, it's the Home Front Command. In Ukraine, it's the State Emergency Service. In Finland, Sweden, and most of Northern Europe, there are national and regional emergency broadcast systems with decades of infrastructure behind them. In South Korea, civil defense sirens and alerts are tested monthly so that the population knows exactly what they sound like. These channels, when functioning, provide real-time guidance on where to shelter, where to avoid, evacuation routes, and when it's safe to move. The information is generally more reliable than social media, faster than news broadcasts, which operate on editorial delay, and infinitely more reliable than rumors. Sweden updated its civil defense preparedness leaflet in 2018 and distributed it to every household in the country, titled Om krisen eller kriget kommer, if crisis or war comes. It directed residents to specific emergency broadcast frequencies, explained what official alerts sound like, and outlined what to do when they hear them. The point isn't that Sweden is exceptional. The point is that this information exists. It's been carefully prepared by people whose entire job is civilian survival, and it's available to you before you need it. Find out what your country's civil defense communication channels are. In many countries, SMS alerts are sent automatically based on your phone's location. No subscription or app required. In Germany, the national warning app Nina delivers emergency alerts. In France, it's FR Alert. Japan's J Alert system is among the most technically sophisticated in the world, tested extensively against North Korean missile overflight warnings. If official communications contradict what you're seeing on social media, default to official guidance. Not because governments are always right, they aren't, but because civil defense channels represent coordinated, real-time situational awareness that no journalist or social media platform can match during an active crisis. The person running the official alert system knows where the threat actually is. The person posting a 15-second clip knows what they can see from one window. Thing 1. Control your breathing and stay rational. This is the first thing on the list in terms of priority, and it might be the most important. Fear is a physiological state. When adrenaline floods your system and your heart rate climbs above 150 beats per minute, your capacity for complex decision-making degrades significantly. You start missing obvious options. You fixate. Military and emergency medical training accounts for this explicitly, because a panicked person makes decisions that actively harm their chances of survival. The brain, under acute threat, prioritizes speed over accuracy, the fastest possible response, not the best one. Your job in those moments is to slow down just enough to make better decisions without losing the urgency keeping you alert. The mechanism for interrupting the acute stress response is controlled breathing. It sounds almost insultingly simple for a situation involving artillery fire. It works anyway. Slow, deliberate breathing, 4 counts in, hold for 4 counts out, activates the parasympathetic nervous system and begins to counteract the adrenaline response within seconds. This technique is used in combat medicine, by hostage negotiators, by surgeons in emergencies, and by pilots during in-flight crises. It's not a wellness practice. It's a physiological intervention. The other component, staying rational, means staying task-focused. When fear spikes, return to the list. What is the next concrete thing you need to do? Get low. Get to the interior room. Find the go bag. Turn off the gas. Fill the water. Each completed action is a small reduction in vulnerability and a small increase in your sense of agency. And that sense of agency directly counters the helplessness that feeds panic. Viktor Frankl, who survived multiple Nazi concentration camps and later wrote Man's Search for Meaning, observed that the people around him who endured the worst conditions were not those with the most physical advantages. They were those who retained the capacity to choose their response. In his own words, everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances. That freedom, to choose how you respond between the explosion and your next action, is exactly what controlled breathing protects. You will be frightened. That's not a problem to solve. The goal is not to eliminate the fear. The goal is to stay functional inside it. 30 minutes is a very short window. Everything on this list is something you can do within it, without special training, without military experience, without anything more than a decision to act rather than freeze. None of these 15 things are complicated. The problem with preparedness is that it's always invisible when it's working, and catastrophically obvious when it isn't. The gap between doing these things and not is not the gap between safety and danger. War doesn't offer guarantees, but it is the gap between giving yourself a real chance and leaving everything to chance. Most people who have lived through urban conflict will tell you that the actions taken in the first few minutes determined almost everything that followed, not because they guaranteed survival, but because they preserved options. If this video gave you something useful, share it with someone who might need it. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment below telling us where you're watching from. Stay aware, stay prepared, and hopefully, none of this ever becomes relevant to you.